Hi there. My name's Jake. I make gaming supplements, and right now I want to talk to you about a whole bunch of trouble that we're in as the greater gaming community. A couple weeks ago, some large third-party creators received an email from Wizards of the Coast offering to discuss changes with the OGL for 1D&D. They had to sign an NDA in order to receive this information in a meeting that they had to schedule with WOTC. On January 4th, a couple days ago, the NDA ended, and a few of those individuals informed people in the RPG community of the new version of the Open Gaming License, version 1.1. Version 1.0 is something that, for 20 years, has given creators the ability to paint amazing worlds, to fill our minds with wonder and adventure, and to earn a living by sharing their imaginations and skill. The last time WOTC tried to change the terms of their gaming license, it was for 4th edition, and it was so constraining that it encouraged the rise of Paizo with Pathfinder. Their plan backfired, and WOTC made their own competitors by trying to put handcuffs on creators. Tons of amazing and rich content has been made by third-party creators, including supplements that cover for inadequacies in WOTC's production. Like how in Spelljammer they didn't have rules on ship-to-ship combat. We gamers need alternatives for when Wizards screws up. And not just to fix their mistakes either. They can't be expected to create everything that we want to see or need access to. We need options. Sometimes really weird options that they wouldn't do. This new OGL 1.1 kills the OGL 1.0. So no third-party content for 3.5 or 5e, including Pathfinder 1 or 2, can legally be sold or created anymore under it. It states that OGL 1.0 is no longer an authorized license agreement. Any book that has the OGL 1.0 pasted in the front of it can no longer be sold. Anyone who creates content using anything D&D has to agree to the new OGL, or they cannot sell anything they create. This means telling WOTC what they intend on making, and they have to give WOTC a copy of the completed work when it's done. If I publish under the OGL 1.1, WOTC could republish all my writing at their discretion. If I create a source book of a new world with new lore and use the same dice mechanics and class structure, they can take and re-release everything I put in that book without compensating me at all or even giving me any credit. From a D&D Beyond article, if you're making commercial content, relatively little is going to change for most creators. That's not true. If this gaming license is the final version, we will lose a huge amount of variety and diversity in the gaming biosphere. The imaginosphere, if you will. The larger companies will be okay, and really small creators, but the gaming marketplace will be controlled by Wizards of the Coast, and just a few others. People will lose their jobs, maybe homes. It will hurt their families. This is not good for anyone. And I'll make it clear, this is also bad for WOTC. They're alienating a huge amount of their customers by showing how forceful and controlling they can be. In fact, whether or not Wizards changes this version of the OGL to something really good for creators, they've already shown that they are focused on money and control, above ensuring that their supporters are loyal. Any content that isn't PDF or book also isn't permitted. This could spell the death of your favorite VTTs or apps, like Kobold Fight Club, Foundry, Fantasy Grounds, Alchemy, Roll20, plus board games, video games, and miniatures, or anything you want to create that has a likeness to anything that WOTC considers theirs. Besides that, the OGL 1.0 had wording that said it was a perpetual license. Is this even legal? Roll for Combat, YouTubers, brought on who they stated was an expert contract lawyer to talk about this. Lawyer Alan L. Bushlow clarifies that he's not a dedicated contract lawyer, but a general practice lawyer with some experience dealing with contracts. None of what he said should be taken as legal advice, blah, 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 blah.
They're now saying it's null and void, it's no longer authorized, and that you have to now start using this 1.1 whether you like it or not. Right.
So the rule that says that sometimes even when an agreement is silent as to whether it can be revoked or not, it can be revoked. It usually doesn't apply in cases where there's a quid pro quo between the parties. And here it says that there's consideration. There's also a concept in the law that when you're trying to interpret an agreement, the person who drafted the agreement gets all of the presumptions made against them. So they drafted this. They didn't get any input from the gaming community when they drafted this, and yet they volunteered that there's a grant of a license and consideration. They say it right in the title. So for those commentators who have suggested that even though it's a perpetual license, it could be revoked, I'm not so sure I agree with that, unless they can show that in using the license, the people that have been using the license violated some of the terms, right? So if I claim to be using the license, but I appropriate clearly proprietary material that belongs to Wizards of the Coast, like I use the D&D mark, or I use the Dungeons and Dragons name, even though the license said I wouldn't do that, well, clearly they can revoke the license in that circumstance because I haven't honored my end of the agreement.
Right.
But assuming I've done everything right, it's a perpetual license. I think the better interpretation is going to be that it can't be revoked.
As for me, I can't say if they can revoke the 1.0. I don't know. In the new OGL, there is no mention of perpetual worldwide rights given to creators, which was present in Section 4 of the original OGL. And one of the caveats is that WOTC can modify or terminate this agreement for any reason whatsoever, provided we give 30 days notice. This means that if you begin a project, say with Kickstarter, and pay for editors, artists, printing and production, advertising, this could be your financial ruin. This means that they can take away your license to print this even if you did nothing wrong, while it's still being published. WOTC also gets the right to use any content that anyone who acts under the new OGL creates, whether commercial or non-commercial. Although this is couched in language to protect Wizards' products from infringing on creators' copyright, the document states that for any content created under the updated OGL, regardless of whether or not it is owned by the creator, Wizards will have a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use that content for any purpose. End quote. I want to highlight one part of that I kind of glossed over. Non-commercial rights are given to them as well. So anything that you create for free, WOTC gets the rights. This is not a fair agreement. What's the worst case scenario? Well, it could be that the gaming community splinters into 1,000 different gaming systems, and there's no cohesion anymore. It's hard to relate to each other in that way, or to move from one system to another. It's just confusing. Or I think Ted from Nerd Immersion said it best, when he said to IGN in an interview, "If this continues, I could see a rise in popularity of other non-D&D and non-OGL RPGs. I also wouldn't be surprised if several of the creators who are frustrated by these changes end up designing a new replacement RPG system, similar to how 4E and the game system license led to the creation of Pathfinder using the original OGL." I want to end this with a possible ray of light. In the 1.1 OGL, Wizards of the Coast is clearly expecting these OGL changes will be met with some resistance. The document notes that if the company oversteps, they are aware that they will receive community pushback and bad PR, and we're more than open to being convinced that we made a wrong decision. Well, Wizards, you have made the wrong decision. Or in the words of the Arrow, you have failed this city.